The night was calm at first. The sea, black and endless, heaved gently against the steel hull of the Jaskin 4, a tugboat tasked with steadying oil tankers off the Nigerian coast. Inside the galley, Harrison Okene, the ship's cook, moved about quietly, checking his supplies, humming a tune only the sea could hear. But on the morning of May 26, 2013, the ocean turned violent. A storm struck before dawn, battering the tugboat with walls of water. Harrison had barely risen from his bunk when the ship lurched violently. In seconds, the world flipped upside down. Metal shrieked, men shouted, and the Atlantic poured in like a monster claiming its prey. The Jaskin 4 capsized. Harrison, barefoot and in only his boxers, was flung into the darkness. Water swallowed the corridors, sweeping away everything and everyone. He fought upward, lungs burning, until he found himself in a small air pocket in the engineer's office. The rest of the vessel lay drowned, silent and black. He was 30 meters below the surface, sealed in a steel coffin at the bottom of the Atlantic. Hours blurred into timeless misery. The air reeked of oil, salt, and death. The temperature dropped until his teeth clattered uncontrollably. He wrapped himself in 2 soaked mattresses he had pulled from floating debris, shivering as though the ocean had already claimed his soul. At first, he prayed, "God, don't let me die like this." His voice echoed into the void, but as the hours dragged into a full day, his mind betrayed him. Shapes began to move in the darkness. He swore he heard footsteps on the flooded floor, whispers rising above the groaning of the ship. Sometimes he thought he saw the outlines of his crewmates in the water, floating, staring. When a piece of debris brushed against his leg, he screamed, convinced that dead hands were reaching for him. He battled hallucinations, visions of his wife calling out to him, then fading into the black. At times he was sure the ocean itself was alive, watching, waiting to swallow him whole. But something in him refused to surrender. He forced himself to breathe slowly, whispering psalms he had memorized as a child. He thought of his wife, her smile, the life he still wanted to live. He clung to those thoughts like a man clings to driftwood in a storm. Fear became his constant companion, but courage, the quiet, stubborn kind, rose up beside it. On the third day, a dull clang echoed through the hull, then another. Harrison froze. His pulse raced. Were they rescuers, or was the ship collapsing? A glow pierced the black water. Divers. Harrison's heart thundered. He reached out, but fear pinned him still. If he swam into the water, he might drown. If he stayed, they might leave. He whispered a desperate prayer and plunged his hand into the water. The diver recoiled, startled beyond belief. He had come expecting corpses, not the living. But Harrison grabbed his arm, trembling, his lips forming silent words. "I'm alive." The rescue was painstaking. The divers calmed him, fitted him with gear, and led him through the labyrinth of twisted corridors. Because his body had been under pressure for so long, rushing upward could have killed him. Slowly, carefully, they guided him to the surface. When Harrison finally broke into daylight, the sun seared his eyes. Fresh air rushed into his lungs. He sobbed uncontrollably, collapsing into the arms of the rescuers. Out of 12 men, he alone had survived, but survival was only the beginning. On land, Harrison was haunted. The ocean lived inside his mind, whispering in dreams. At night he woke drenched in sweat, convinced he was drowning again. Hallucinations returned in flashes, faces of his lost crewmates drifting before him. Even bathing became a struggle. The feel of water on his skin could send him spiraling into panic. For months, he feared the sea. He could not look at it without trembling. The ocean that had spared him had also scarred him. Yet deep inside, another voice called. A whisper, not of fear, but of defiance. If the sea could not kill me, he told himself one morning, then I must learn to master it. And so, step by shaky step, Harrison began to confront the very thing he dreaded. First, he stood at the shoreline, letting the waves lap at his feet. Then he waded deeper, until the water touched his chest. Each time his heart thundered with panic, but he pushed on. Eventually, he enrolled in diving school. The first time he sank beneath the surface with a tank strapped to his back, his hands trembled. Memories of that coffin-like air pocket flooded in, but he gritted his teeth and stayed. Dive after dive, he fought the fear until it bent before him. Harrison Okene, the man who once clung to life in a bubble of air under the Atlantic, became a certified commercial diver. His story is one of the ocean's cruelest nightmares, but also one of its greatest miracles. He had dined with death in the belly of the sea, hallucinated in darkness, faced the terror of drowning 1,000 times in his mind, and yet rose again, not just as a survivor, but as a man who turned his fear into strength. When people ask him why he chose to return to the water, he only smiles faintly. Because, he says, I could not let the ocean be my enemy forever.